Welcome back everyone to Formula 1 2021 for your race review for the 2021 French Grand Prix. Now, this week I've not been all that positive about heading to France, heading back to the circuit Paul Ricard, and I'm happy to report I was dead wrong. What a race in France, what a thrilling Grand Prix we were treated to yesterday, and so if you haven't had chance to watch the highlights, go and do that, then come back to the race review because spoiler warning is in full effect. But just before we get to that, here was your grid for yesterday's French Grand Prix. It was the second pole position in 2021 for Max Verstappen. Could he convert it to 3 wins in a row for Red Bull Racing? Hamilton was second, Bottas was third, and Sergio Perez rounded out the second row. The midfield started with Carlos Sainz for Ferrari with home hero Pierre Gasly in P6, Charles Leclerc lined up alongside Lando Norris with Alonso and Ricciardo rounding out the top 10. In P11 was your second home hero Esteban Ocon starting on the alternate strategy. What could he, along with Sebastian Vettel, do from row 6 on the grid? Antonio Giovinazzi was P13 in front of George Russell and Mick Schumacher, who made it into Q2 for the first time in his Formula 1 career. Latifi was 16th, Raikkonen and Mazepin 17th and 18th on row 9, and Lance Stroll would be all on his own on row 10 as Yuki Tsunoda started from the pit lane. And with your grid now out of the way, here is your result for yesterday's French Grand Prix. And indeed, converting pole position to race victory number 3 of 2021, Red Bull's third victory in a row, Max Verstappen is victorious in the French Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton fought all the way but was overtaken with 2 laps to go, P2 for the British driver, and Sergio Perez, back-to-back podiums for the Mexican driver, rounded out your top 3. Valtteri Bottas was P4, not a happy bunny at the end of the race. We definitely have to talk about Mercedes and their strategic errors in today's race a little bit later on, but a team that got it bang on was McLaren, 5th and 6th for the Papaya cars. Gasly was 7th in his home Grand Prix in front of Alonso in 8th, and the 2 Aston Martin cars once again doing the most audacious overcut strategy, both of them in the points with Sebastian Vettel 9th and Lance Stroll P10. No points for Carlos Sainz, 5th on the grid, 11th at the checkered flag, but a man behind him had a great race in George Russell P12 and Yuki Tsunoda from the pit lane to 13th at the checkered flag. Home hero Ocon didn't quite have the race he was hoping for and ended 14th in front of Giovinazzi. Charles Leclerc in 16th place. A 2-stop strategy put paid to any chance of points in the Monegasque driver's day. Raikkonen was 17th, Latifi 18th, and with Schumacher and Mazepin 19th and 20th for the 10th time, just the 10th time in Formula 1 history, all 20 drivers finished today's Grand Prix. Right then, let's head over to our race reports because, well, we've got a lot to talk about, and normally with Paul Ricard, that is certainly not the case, but Red Bull today got everything just perfect. Strategy on both drivers, pinpoint accurate, with Max Verstappen doing a 2-stop strategy, undercutting Lewis Hamilton at the first pit stop, and then undercutting everyone, even though he was leading the race, but net undercut everyone with a second stop, managed to fight his way back through the field, passing Perez, who was very accommodating to his teammates, overtaking Valtteri Bottas, and with 2 laps to go, repassing Hamilton to take the lead and victory for the 3rd time this season. A great drive from Verstappen. The only real issue of note was lap 1, turn 1, where he went a little bit wide and lost the lead to Hamilton, but was able to keep pace with the Mercedes in that first stint. And again, that strategic prowess from Red Bull really playing dividends over the course of the Grand Prix. On the other side of the garage, a different strategy to Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, in that early phase of the Grand Prix when the lead three were getting away a little bit and the gap was opening up between third place Bottas and fourth place Perez. Checo did a great job, as he always does in Formula 1. It's what he's known for, is looking after tyres. He did it to perfection yesterday, went super long on that first stint on the medium tyres, and eventually, when the Mexican driver came in for his first pit stop, went onto those hard tyres. They were so much newer, so much fresher than the two Mercedes. Checo, just like Max, in the closing stages, was able to hound down Valtteri Bottas and overtake him for his second podium of the season. A great day for Red Bull Racing, but I just wonder, is this a day where Red Bull got everything bang on? Their car was the car to beat. Or is this a mistake from Mercedes? Is this a race Mercedes have let go? And having a day to really think about it, rewatch the highlights, I think it's the latter. I think Mercedes had this race in their hands. Yes, in qualifying, they didn't quite snatch the pole, but they knew they had a car that was better in race trim than compared to qualifying. And after Max Verstappen made that mistake at turn 1 on the very first lap, they also had track position. And so during that first phase of the Grand Prix, where cars in the midfield went a little bit earlier than our front four cars, the two Mercs and the two Red Bulls, it was very clear Charles Leclerc, Daniel Ricciardo in particular, the undercut strategy, so those cars that pitted first had such an advantage and were able to gain so much time on the cars they were chasing. I feel Mercedes should have been aware of that. And I know their focus was well and truly on Verstappen, on Perez, and focusing on their cars. And yes, all their simulations showed that the undercut wasn't going to be that powerful. But I don't think anyone yesterday not only expected the undercut to be that extreme, but tyre degradation, I don't think anyone was quite ready for that around Paul Ricard. It caught out everyone. The cooler track temperatures, a bit of rain before we got going in the Formula 3 race in the morning, all put together gave us a race that was unpredictable in terms of strategy, which those of you who've watched the channel for a while will know I love. I'm an absolute sucker for a race on strategy, and I feel Mercedes in the first round of pit stops let themselves down by letting Verstappen gain over 3 seconds on an undercut. And to then make matters worse, when Verstappen came in a second time, I'm surprised they didn't even choose one car to try and cover off Verstappen, yet alone attempt it with none of them. That's bizarre to me, because Mercedes, of all teams, know doing that two-stop, being able to be the hunter, being able to be aggressive on the tyres, has won them races in the past. It's won them races this very season in Spain this year against Max Verstappen. So Red Bull today definitely pulled the Uno reverse card. Valtteri Bottas was livid the team didn't listen to him when he blatantly said really early on in the race, in all fairness to Valtteri, that this race is going to be a two-stop. If they had listened, it probably would have been a Mercedes victory. It definitely would have given Red Bull more to think about, more headaches during the Grand Prix. And though Red Bull were faultless today, both of their drivers putting fantastic performances, I just feel Mercedes could have made them work a little bit harder. I'd love to know your thoughts on that one in the comments below, because I think that's going to be a bit of a spicy one, and I can guess straight away there's going to be Mercedes fanboys and girls and Red Bull fanboys and girls in the comments having a go at me. But it's a really interesting time in the season where we've got two teams fighting for victories, fighting for the title, which on its own is insane. This is what we want to see. And at circuits like Paul Ricard, which normally, I'll keep my voice down, normally is a bit of a stinker, the fact that we got an insane race, not only at the front, also in the midfield, that we'll talk about in a moment's time, says a lot about how much a championship fight can really help races that normally are a bit of a snooze fest. But I will move on from those top two teams. There was so much to talk about, so I have spoken about them a little bit longer than normal. But again, it's just fantastic. We're getting racing week in, week out, no matter where we go. And it makes me even more excited for next year when, fingers crossed, we've got even more teams fighting at the front. And one such team that will be keeping their fingers and toes very much crossed that they will be joining Mercedes and Red Bull in that fight for the title next season is McLaren. A disappointing, well, was it a disappointing qualifying? 8th and 10th, both cars into Q3, and a theme we have seen all year long with that papaya car is qualifying is a bit meh. It's not great, but in the race, they really come alive. And yesterday, in that mid-phase of the Grand Prix, while strategy was starting to boil up in terms of Red Bull and Mercedes, the McLaren show was well and truly on in that midfield fight, making passes here, there and everywhere. And what was even more lovely to see is Lando and Daniel were both getting their elbows out. Both of them together in the first stages of the race down towards turn 1. Ricciardo giving a bit of a squeeze on Lando, but both of them after that were able to get into a rhythm and start overtaking pretty much everyone in that midfield. Fernando Alonso, bless him, got mugged off twice in 2 corners. First Daniel Ricciardo, then Lando Norris at turn 11, which for me was my overtake of the race. They managed to catch up with the 2 Ferraris. Pierre Gasly was a bit cheeky, re-overtaking Lando Norris. But the race pace in that machine, we spoke about it on Friday and I thought it looked good. But I don't think anyone expected what we actually saw yesterday. And 5th and 6th in a race with no safety cars, no yellow flags, no retirement is a great day for McLaren. Lando Norris continues his 100% point scoring record, and Danny Rick with so many overtakes today, I think he's got that bit of mojo back. I really feel yesterday we saw the Honey Badger, the king of the late breakers, Mr. Lick the Stamp and Send It. And if we can get that a little bit more often, if that confidence is finally there, all of us are going to be very happy bunnies indeed over the next few weekends. Pierre Gasly in 7th probably won't be quite as happy as the 2 McLarens. It's points, and that's solid in a car that is not quite as good as those front-running midfield teams, and in a team where their focus is in that mid-group, in the midfield, the mid-midfield, if we want to call it that, fighting with Aston Martin, fighting with Alpine, and today, Gasly, finishing 7th, has got the biggest points tally out of all those 3 teams. Job well done for Pierre, who had a really good recovery drive. Not great strategy on his side of the garage today. Came in really late compared to most of those midfield runners, except Lando Norris, who, side note on that, I did forget to mention, Norris, who went so long, just like Perez, that strategy worked a treat, with Daniel Ricciardo doing the complete opposite, one of the first to come in. Just a great day for McLaren. But back to AlphaTauri, that's the team we're on now. Gasly's strategy wasn't great, and actually Pierre had to do a bit of a comeback drive in those closing stages, caught Ricciardo, and was in a fight with Danny Rick and Alonso in the last couple of laps. Danny Rick able to hold on to 6th, but not a bad job from Pierre Gasly. And Yuki Tsunoda, who, bless him, out in Q1, another mistake, had a strong drive yesterday. 13th place at the checkered flag. Hey, it's not points. Yes, he wants points. That's the target. That's the dream for him at the moment. But he kept his nose clean. He kept out of trouble. No mistakes. Plenty of overtakes. And in this stage of his career, I think that is pretty respectable. Alpine. I expected more from them today. And I suppose it's not really the fault of either of their drivers. The race just never really came to them. Fernando Alonso, it kind of reminds me like Bahrain, seemed to just be getting overtaken here, there and everywhere, but he wasn't going to get overtaken lying down, that's for sure. Really made plenty of drivers work for their overtakes. But the issue was that pace that we saw in Friday that we have seen so far this season just never really showed up. And for Esteban Ocon, a driver who was my ones to watch for the race yesterday, starting P11 on the alternate strategy, where did he go? He's finished 14th, not only behind Yuki Tsunoda, but also behind George Russell with no issues of note. That's bizarre. I've tried to do a bit of digging, looking into any onboards, which we don't have a lot of yet from yesterday's race, especially with Esteban Ocon. So whether there was some kind of mistake, a delayed pit stop, I've not seen anything. And it just seems those tyres in those unpredictable conditions we saw yesterday just didn't suit that Alpine car. 8th for Alonso isn't bad, but there's no doubt Ocon, with that new contract, starting 11th on the alternate strategy, will be a little bit disappointed. 9th and 10th for Aston Martin. I mean, how do these guys keep doing it? The most ridiculous, and I mean ridiculous overcut strategies you have ever seen. And when it worked in Monaco, I thought, okay guys, that was cool, that was fun. But you've had your fun. Great that you've got 5th, but let's not try that again. That's a Monaco special doing an overcut. Let's keep it simple. Next time out. Well, Baku rolls around and they do the exact same thing and they get a 2nd place. And you bet ya, they've done it twice in a row, back on a traditional racing track, and they do it again. And this time, both cars in the points. Sebastian Vettel did a great move on Fernando Alonso around the chicane in Sector 2. Stroll from 19th to points. Happy days, sunshine and rainbows at Aston Martin. But no rainbows, no sunshine at all at Ferrari. No points. No points, man. Hey? What? How did we get there? 11th for Carlos Sainz. Started 5th. Was in the mix for most of the race. But a theme we have seen all year long is that car does not look after tyres. It's the same today. And not only is it 11th for Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc. You may be wondering where he went. 16th is the answer. 16th. He tried a 2-stop. Ferrari tried a 2-stop. And though that car isn't great at looking after its tyres, I'd have thought with a 2-stop they still would have had a chance at getting points. Well, Leclerc was able to get past Kimi Raikkonen, had a great little ding-dong with Kimi Raikkonen from a few clips I've seen post-race, but that was it. That was it. Sorry, Ferrari fans. I think that's a day to forget. And with McLaren, with McLaren 5th and 6th, it just gets worse for the prancing horses today. And though Spielberg, Austria, our venue for the next 2 races, is normally kind on tyres, Paul Ricard is normally kind on tyres, so a lot of question marks, a lot of head scratching at Ferrari following yesterday's race. 3 teams to go then. An Alfa Romeo, it's 15th and 17th, but a quiet day. Not really much shown on TV. In the press releases post Grand Prix, they weren't too buoyant, they weren't too disappointed. With no retirements, it's always going to be difficult for these backmarkers to get anywhere near points. Giovinazzi, who was one of my stars of quali, unable to do anything with it really in the Grand Prix. And Raikkonen, as I just mentioned, had a bit of a scrap with Leclerc, but a quiet day from both cars. Williams though. I should have done Williams before Alfa Romeo. Anyway, Williams, different story for Williams today. Because with Latifi in 18th, it's kind of what you would expect. With no retirements, no safety cars, a one-stop strategy. That's what we're going to expect from Williams this year. Russell 12th. Let me repeat. George Russell in 12th is not what we would be expecting from the G-Russ. Mr. Saturday was a Mr. Sunday. This weekend as well has said straight away after the race that was his best race with Williams. Unfortunately, we weren't able to see a lot of it, but after having a terrible start, dropping down to 19th place after lap 1 to recover to 12th on a one-stop strategy in front of guys like Leclerc, both Alfa Romeos, Yuki Tsunoda, and I think the biggest one is Esteban Ocon. That's incredible scenes from George Russell. A lot of respect has got to go to that drive. And for Haas, a very Haas day. Their car, they know they haven't got the pace this year. They're focusing on next season. A bit of a ding-dong between the two of them in the opening laps. Gunter was probably thinking, boys, just let's keep it clean. They pretty much did that. More learning for the two of them, but again, their focus is well and truly on next season. Before we go then, let's take a look at your Drivers and Constructors Championships, as well as Driver of the Day and Race Rating. After claiming victory in today's Grand Prix, Max Verstappen extends his lead at the top of the standings, 131 points to Lewis Hamilton's 119. Perez extends his lead in third place, Norris holds on to fourth, but Valtteri Bottas moves up to fifth, with Charles Leclerc scoring 0 points in today's race. Sainz is 7th, Gasly 8th, Ricciardo jumps Sebastian Vettel. Both of them round out your top 10. Alonso is in 11th in front of teammate Esteban Ocon. Lance Stroll closes in P13 on 10 points. Tsunoda is on 8. Both Alfa Romeos have 1 apiece. And with Russell, his incredible result today, P12 for Williams, he's now up to 17th. Schumacher is 18th, Mazepin 19th, and Nicholas Latifi in P20 rounds out your field. In the Constructors, Red Bull extend their lead over reigning champs Mercedes, while McLaren leapfrog Ferrari and move into third. AlphaTauri is 5th, Aston Martin is 6th, they're in front of Alpine on 29, Alfa Romeo on 2, Williams move into 9th, but both Williams and Haas both yet to score. Before we go, my driver of the day, and first up, race rating. I was expecting a 2 or a 3. Last time we were in Paul Ricard, I gave it a 3. This time, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. And for the record, let's get some comments on this one. I think that was better than Baku. Yeah, there's some thunder for the comments section. Overall, I think this race was better than Baku. Start to finish today was just an awesome Grand Prix. And yes, Baku had a crescendo of a finish, but there were some boring moments in Baku, and I did not get that from Paul Ricard. Well done, Paul Ricard, for the best race we have ever seen at this particular venue. And driver of the day, my qualifying driver of the day, went to Max Verstappen. In the race, I'm giving it to Daniel Ricciardo, the Honey Badger, overtaking boys and girls here, there, and everywhere. Dive bombs around the outside, you name it, he was doing it. And a driver who's a little bit low on confidence at the moment, starting 10th, finishing 6th, I think was a really good job today from Daniel Ricciardo. But so many candidates to choose from, but my Racing Reviews driver of the weekend goes to Max Verstappen. Pole position and a stunning race today. You can't really ask for much more. But that is it from me here in Paul Ricard. A stunned Mr. Racing Reviews. I can't believe the race we had this weekend, but that's just Formula 1 at the moment. And if you want to join me for the ride, the subscribe button is down below to keep up to date with all Formula 1 2021. Thank you very much for watching. Like if you did enjoy, and I hope to see you all in the next one.